clinic, I'm hand stitched. Don't spend a day in my hamlet. My city lost, some say it's Atlantis. I went to Cass with a tan bitch, Francis. She rolled a room on the beach, that's a sandwich. So I ate it like it. Haters hate to like it. Sex, drugs, and playing dices, those are our favorite vices. But this life will take a toll on you. Well, I guess you gotta pay the prices. I know the prices.
And he never hung with the saints. It makes no sense to save the righteous. Hey, with Rage In. That's like my favorite line in that whole song. I know who Christ is. He never hung with the saints. It makes no sense to save the righteous. All right, so check this out. Everything I have to say is important. Remember that? Everything that I have to say is important. As soon as I said, I think I'm done with my channel, y'all. Like, the nagging, you forgot to tell them about the drugs. Like, really tell them about it, okay? I have so many things that I thought of. I never did really do music interpretation, like I said. There's like so many things that I didn't touch on, but I feel like I really have said enough. But the drugs are probably the most important one. Aside from, you know, what's going on in the world in regards to sex trafficking, right? So I mentioned them in covert emotional incest and smoking. I said that everything that we are in bondage to once was used by shamans. The way that drug use is currently in society is a result of witchcraft. Drugs aren't the issue, it's the bondage, okay? Even when I mention that someone is on drugs or using it, it's not that you can't use it. The question is, are you in bondage to it, right? I was sober before I even touched cards. I had to abstain from even smoking weed, and I only smoked cigarettes, and that was my requirement. I cannot tell you what yours is, but I can tell you if you are in bondage or suffering from certain addictions while using divination, it can be a costly thing. There is a noted difference between using drugs to cope and using drugs in a healed, ritualistic way. So, you know, I've even spoken on my desire to try ayahuasca for healing purposes, so I do not judge. At the very least, I have the understanding of its root, and my only issue with drug use is the bondage aspect. Okay, so with my woes, and shout out to the Tarot, I mentioned my struggles with cocaine and noted others. Hidden drug issues, I mentioned the correlation with my parents and how it created an algorithm in which I dated people with the same issues and how that affected myself. In coping skills, I speak on how drugs correlate to the chakras and isolation and spiritual torture. I mentioned how I used it to stay warm and deal with loneliness. I have touched on it, but my specific experience with it is required. So a little background. In 2008, I decided that I was going to go to the YWCA shelter. Okay, that's the same shelter that I stayed in last year when I realized that I was on the Underground Railroad. Okay, and I stayed in room 412 then, and I stayed in room 412 last year. Right, so it made itself a full circle. But I did that by choice. I wasn't like evicted or anything. I went to my parents and I wrote them a letter on New Year's that I needed to leave. When I get there, I meet a man who calls himself Saint Nick. I dealt with him until my 21st birthday in 2009, when my son's DNA test came back, and when his father found out that I wasn't lying about paternity, he wanted to rekindle our relationship. I didn't mind because Saint Nick would always tell me that I would be giving his friends bedroom eyes, and he tried to sell me, and I'm not about that shit. So I had no problem going back. But when we fast forward to 2012, after leaving the psych ward in April, I had two very significant things happen. I met Natania's dad, and I started hanging out with Saint Nick. As soon as I stepped foot in the psych ward, the battle for Jeremiah had began. Okay, so pay attention. If I went into the psych ward, and then I come out of the psych ward and I meet Natania's dad and run into Saint Nick, all these things happening right then. Okay. I mentioned in both the Beauty Spectrum and Who Runs the World that I had started drinking a lot as a result of dealing with Natanya's dad. I was codependent, so I participated in the behaviors of addicts around me. However, admittedly, I did go out on my own and I started drinking heavily alone. And soon I'm with Nick every night after I get off work. His house is like a party house. He has a lot of people there all the time. They are using coke, but I am not. And I'm adamant that I can't due to a custody battle. But when Saint Nick and I are alone, he smokes weed with me. But it's a separate bag from what he uses with the group. He called it Vicks. It tasted like vapor. But it would get me extra fucked up. I'd be high as fuck. All right. So one day I'm accused of using coke by Jeremiah's dad because I was emotional. There appeared to be a threat of bed bugs. And my dad had bed bugs the last time I lived with him. So I was so traumatized that at night I would see the spots on the floor, even though my own apartment was clean and infestation free. Because of this, Jeremiah's dad accuses me of using drugs because I'm hallucinating. But at this point, I obviously denied any drug use. And at that point, I genuinely hadn't at my own accord. But within a few months, I finally did. After months of being offered, I finally asked for it myself. I craved it, and as soon as I hit it, it was like I had this desire quelled, like I had been doing it the whole time. This was late fall 2012. As the case went on, I became more distressed. By March of 2013, I was heavily using. This is from April 2012 to April 2013. What's very significant about that is that everything happens in cycles. The year previous, on April 2nd, 2011, is when I got the abortion that I mentioned in Who Runs the World. And I also mentioned in that video that I felt that Aaron is that terminated child because on April 2nd, 2017, I found out I was pregnant. Okay? And both babies were due on November 24th. And I find that to be an odd coincidence. Okay? So that's very significant to bring up because every year in March to April, there are significant things happening. And because of this very specific cycle is why I was ever suggested to a particular therapist who specialized in borderline personality disorder. Because the cycling, it's something that's noted in the DSM-5 is that we run on cycles, right? It's not us, it's them. It's what they're doing. So, shit. Okay, sorry. All right. One day, Saint Nick tells me I have to leave because my son's dad is there. And I was confused because why would he ever rank over me? What? Me and you was chilling. Now, we weren't sleeping together at this time. But you slept with me. Why would you ever kick me out from my baby dad? That sounds unusual. Right? I immediately stopped hanging out with him, but took up time with his family member, and we'll call him Green, okay? At this point, I was scared, so I started carrying the Bible with me. I distinctly remember as this shit unfolded because I would Sing About Me, I'm Dying of Thirst by Kendrick Lamar, because Courtney Hahn mentioned in Why I Do This had just passed. That date was May 15, 2013. So Green is also mentioned in When You Fight with the Divine. He is the wonderful gentleman who set me up to have my phone stolen, the same phone that had all of my evidence for my court case. Now, obviously, I didn't know that at the time, but this devastation took me into further drug use, and I saw that I may be struggling to get off. So I brought my fucking Bible everywhere we went. We started hanging out with St. Nick's neighbor, and she would rag on me for carrying the Bible. She would tell me I was fake and shit. I told her exactly what the fuck I just said. I said, I'm scared, and I'm calling out to God. As they're laying lines, I opened up to Jeremiah 11:18. And there's obvious reasons behind that, okay? My son, Jeremiah, was born on 11/18. And Drake has a song called November 18th. You know, I find it fascinating how much music, specifically Drake, Jay-Z, Kanye, and Lil Wayne play in my life. They're always there. I can draw up memories by playing their music because they were so heavily, like, the way I live my life, I was following. It was like I was following, they have mantras and shit. I was following that. That's how I was living. The way that I am, is a sidebar, but the way that I am, with the nails and the hair that's because I would play fancy all the fucking time. I was dancing at the time. I was a stripper at the time. So I got into the mode of, oh, you fancy, huh? Oh, you fancy, huh? And I molded my femininity off of that song. But anyway, right then and there, I asked God to reveal to me those who were against me. By the end of the night, the neighbor tells me that this entire time St. Nick has been lacing my weed and everyone knows I have an STD, but she has respect for me because they only know because I'm a real woman, and real women tell the truth. You know, I never spoke to her again, and I gravitated to other people, less toxic individuals within the group, as well as meeting up with Natanya's dad and a few other men as well. And I always found that funny because that was a very hot girl summer for me. Like, it's funny because he always tries to say that I tried to trap him, but if he would have understood the caliber of men that I was meeting at that time, there's no way that I would have trapped his ass. But okay. July 25th, 2013, I find out I am pregnant with Natanya and give custody to Jeremiah's dad all in the same day. I begin working on becoming sober as I am pregnant, and I don't touch the drug again. Now we fast forward to mid-March 2019. Aaron's dad screws me out of $1,400. That wasn't the issue. It was me trusting him after he says, leave the past behind and trust him, without doing a single thing to prove it. I trusted him. Dummy. And here we show the cycle again. Because when I was furious and telling him how this affected me, he would say he didn't screw me over. He didn't ruin my finances. My dad did. Because the year before, in April 2018, my father also screwed me out of $1,400, and my car that I had paid for was taken away because he managed to get a title loan on it and defaulted. And the reason that was possible was because I didn't immediately switch the title over once I bought it from him, right? So the truth is, I ruined my finances because I moved them around in preparation to receive. I repeatedly trusted these men with no proof or apologies. Okay, that was my bad. 2 weeks after that, on March 30th, 2019, my cousin has her children removed from her home. I was there. She posted a video, and you can hear me in the background arguing with everyone. You can hear the children asking for me to help them. And I was assaulted by police and had big bruise on my wrist, okay? This is causing problems at work, too, because I'm missing work and shit. In the previous months, I had been trying to acquaint myself with my biological family. Met them in December 2018. I had not met my brother, one of my brothers. I have 3 brothers on my mother's side. I met 2 out of 3. And the reason was because he had been in and out of the hospital. And since I had young children, I had put it off because I didn't want to complicate his condition, as they always had runny noses. April 5th, he passed. At this point, I had started to feel resentment towards my adopted mother. It was implied by one of my birth siblings that my mother had come to me in 2008. There was a distinct conversation, 3 of them. Okay, the first was in 2008. My adopted mother asked if I was going to look for my birth mother, to which I said no. Not because I didn't want to meet her. The process was a lot harder. You had to pay and petition the court, and she still had the ability to reject. So I didn't want to go through the trouble just to have her reject me, right? So, I did want to meet her though. Okay. I did also contact the adoption agency and get the medical records at that time, because every time I had a child, I would think of my mother. Okay. When she asked me this, Jeremiah was like 4 months old. And the whole time I was pregnant, I thought about my mom. I thought about her every single day. And then when he got here and looking at his face, it's like, where did that come from? You know? So, I mean, it obviously came from me. The boy is my spitting image, but still, it was like, when you see yourself, you're like, I don't know where that came from. I know it came from me, but where did me come from, right? So, the process is much easier now. It's nothing but going into the vital statistics, paying $25, and they send it to you. You know what I'm saying? So, again, in 2013, when I was pregnant with my daughter, I experienced a lot of anxiety about being a good mother to my daughter, and specifically my daughter. I didn't have these issues. I didn't have these anxieties with my son. But with my daughter, it was different because that mother-daughter situation, right? So I feared that the abandonment surrounding my birth mother would cause me trouble with bonding. And I asked my adopted mother why my birth mother never looked for me. And her response was, how do I know that she didn't? So when my brother dies, and this conversation is had with my other brother, I realized that there was an opportunity to meet him, and I missed it as a result of my mother's manipulation. So basically, when she asked me if I wanted to meet my mother was there. My mother was either on the phone or there, and I said no. And if she would have just said, hey, your mom is looking for you, I would have jumped at that opportunity. Do you see how that worked? So by me saying no, I accidentally turned down the opportunity to meet my mother. There was a third conversation shortly after my mother died, where she asked for my social security number and said it was for life insurance. And I find it significant that my mother passed away June 18, 2012, and I had conceived Natanya exactly a year later. But anyway, until it's Sai, I had said that I had told a therapist that my birth family knew me because I could feel their energy. One of the most irritating things about my brother's death is that I had a cousin that went on a trip to Miami with him and friends the summer before and graduated from high school with him. I said to her, it makes no sense that she knew him and I didn't. The cousin who had her children removed, she would tell me stories about her neighbor. Whole time it was my sister. Another unusual thing is that my brother's house, I have another brother, so like I said, I had 3 brothers. So one passed away, and this brother right here, his house can be seen from the light at the end of my son's street. Like, my son is in his house right now. If he stepped outside, he can go look at his uncle's house. The family friend that got upset with me when I shouldn't, in the video, I shouldn't have to fuck for free, she knew Natanya's dad when we met. Like, her full name and phone number was saved in his phone, okay? And Patrice, who I mentioned and why I do this in Subtle Abuse, she lived behind Natanya's dad when we met. I mean, behind. Okay? I can't confirm if they knew each other then, but later I did find that they were friends on Facebook, and that's after I had the child with him. There was no reason, especially if I'm telling you this motherfucker ain't treating me right. You're supposed to be my friend. There's no reason that y'all was friends on Facebook. Okay, so, I don't know when they met, but there's a 6 degrees of separation there, okay? So anyway, the weekend before my birthday, who do I run into? Green. On my birthday, I lose my job. They send me a certified letter, honey. On the day after, April 23rd, I am driving when my tire pops. I'm really relieved because I'm supposed to be on the freeway, which could have turned into a nasty accident. Y'all just tried that. Y'all tried that a lot. Because that wasn't... Well, hold up. It would have been a nasty accident, but at last minute, I took the street and easily detoured to my cousin's house after sustaining the damage. So you mean to tell me I just ran into you and need you 2 days later? So I call Green because he's a hood mechanic. He takes me to get a tire, and for my birthday offers me a hit of coke, which I took. No harm done, it's just one. But I wasn't done, because I began to call him over every couple of days and indulge. And a couple weeks later is Mother's Day. My cousin begged me to go with her for a double date. When I'm talking to this guy, I was offered money to sleep with him, right? I mentioned this man in the worst thing I've ever done. I declined both him and the money. I told him I had an STD, and we kept talking, and eventually I did service this person, but it was only because I genuinely liked him. No money was ever exchanged. He was married though, and so, that didn't go very far. I am using more drugs, but I have a drug test with Plasma Care, so I stopped. I failed that test. I was confused because I hadn't ever used that much, at least not to my understanding. I even lied to my cousins about it at first. I had no idea that I was using large amounts. It was given to me, so I don't know what size bag I'm using, the difference in size of a line, none of that, but it's evident that I'm using a lot. This is when my sister, my cousin's neighbor, serves me Death Wish coffee, and this is my birth sister as well. And a few days later, I get into a disagreement about money with her. I missed my brother's memorial gathering that took place on his birthday because I had to go to a funeral of my grandfather, and I take a trip to Virginia. I'm triggered as fuck at first to miss that occasion, and then because I'm forced to share a hotel room with my father. My sisters, dad, they wouldn't watch the kids so I could visit with my cousins, and that feeling of being trapped came back immediately. So when I get back to Ohio, I'm ready to use. This is when I use half my Social Security to buy in a weekend because I'm also cut off from it. They wouldn't give me any more. This experience right here is important because this is how a lot of people are getting on drugs. Just like in Tell It to Psy, when I said people are being groomed into sex work, it's the same for drugs. They commonly go hand in hand for women, right? What I'm trying to display here is that these men were literally trying to make me a crack whore. Green, all he did was try to finish what St. Nick started. Okay, so this is when I began talking about leaving the kids. This is what I wrote my mother when she said I needed to move in with my sister. Pros of moving in with sister. Little sister is comfortable. The drug dealer doesn't know that I live there. The cons of moving in with sister. One, it'll increase my sister's rent expenses by $131. 2, I will have to get storage, which will increase expenses by $70. 3, a year commitment in the lease is required, whether it be for sister only. If I leave, that would leave my sister stuck with excess room and higher utility bills. 4, the kids and an adult have to share a room, which will affect their sleep patterns and independent development for them. 5, to get settled to the 2-bedroom requires the kids to move twice, once from my home, again from my sister's 1-bedroom, affecting their stability and routines twice within 30 days. And then when I'm ready to move, which I went a little pessimistic and said, will be never, because I will always have to choose financial stability over mental stability in this scenario. But if I were to move, they would have to move again, which is 3 times in 1 year. Number 6, my sister's life doesn't really fit kids long term in order for me to be in the psych ward or rehab long term. 7, it makes the commute to daycare 20 minutes, costing me more gas expenses. 8, the only place that accepts my credit, even in a year of work on it, is where I am currently. I will end up right back here, but at a higher cost of $100 to $150 than what I'm paying now, because the price I pay is grandfathered into the current lease I'm living under. All right, so here's the pros of moving in with me. That's 8 cons, by the way. All right, so pros of moving in with me. My sister will save in rent expenses by $131. There is a small storage unit on the house that my sister can fit her excess things. A new lease does not have to be signed for anyone, and anyone can leave at any time because we were on a month-to-month on my cousin's name. Number 4, it will keep the kids in a home they are used to and their own beds and maintaining their routine. Number 5, everyone has their own room. Number 6, it does not drastically change the commute to work to church or work for Asia. And I'm going to pause and go back for a second. I said I was on that month to month on my cousin's name. Understand that the year prior, when my father took that money, he took that money right when my cousin was moving out. So they working together. She moved out and he's fucking with my finances and I'm behind. And like I said, she left me with bills, utility bills that were past due. Just so you know, I submitted my court documents or my bank statements that showed I was paying the rent. In order to pay online, she didn't get paid on the right day. So I would pay when my Social Security came in. My Social Security came in just in time to pay it every month, so we would avoid fees. So I used the online service myself, and it shows every time I paid it. Y'all telling people I wasn't paying rent. Shit, bitch, you done caught yourself up. Anyways, number 6, it does not drastically change the commute to church or work for a sister. Sorry. It keeps the kids 5 minutes away from daycare. Okay, that's 7 pros. The cons of moving in with me are that my sister would be uncomfortable because she did not like the crime rate or condition of the apartment. Number 2, my sister doesn't like the storage space attached to the house and will need to get a unit, yet she still has more income than me to cover something like that, and certainly will with a savings of $130 in rent expenses. Number 3, only my sister will have to move, and it will have to she would be the one that would have to move twice, but she has good credit and can go wherever she wants in a year. I cannot. My score is in the 400s, so that only qualifies me where I'm at, which is still the least expensive apartment complex for the amount of space. And number 4, my drug dealer knows where I live. Okay, so the pros of the kids going with their fathers were that Natanya would go with her father, and he's been in the same place for 8 years. Aaron would go to his dad's and share a room with a sibling similar age, as well as have a mother figure in the home and a babysitter when his dad goes to work. 3, they get to spend time with their paternal siblings and time with their fathers, which isn't bad, ever. Number 4, I can go to therapy for a long period because the kids are fully removed from the scenario. I'll be significantly saving because I am not responsible for anything but my car payment and gas, making a transition into home faster. Okay. Number 5, no one but the children's fathers will have to change their life around to assist with their children when I am in crisis. Number 6, rather than coming upon a possible brush with CPS every day that I am still using and risking their safety, I have placed them with people I do know that whether they wanted to be bothered with my kids or not, when I said this is what I need to keep them safe, they did not hesitate. As these kids' fathers, I commend them because it's exactly what they should do, deadbeats or not. Sometimes I make myself sick with all the patting on the back I was doing to you motherfuckers. Anyway, sister does not have to bend over backwards for Ashley, which were her words, only for herself to be comfortable. All right, so the cons for the children to leave are 1, that they are not together. 2, that they could get hurt, but they could get hurt anywhere. Number 3, Aaron doesn't really know the people he's going to. And Aaron doesn't know my sister in Texas either. So making it seem as if that's an issue for his father, but not for the sister in Texas, who has called me some of the same names of this child's father, argued with me when she owed me money once, because she also argued with me about money. That's all they ever did. I mean, what really is the difference? And that comment was made because they suggested that I send my kids to adopted sister number 2 out in Texas. And I mean, it's right there in black and white. They don't know her either. There's no difference. Number 4, since mom works, my mother, and goes to school, she'll be too busy and unable to check on my son periodically, whether it be in person or via phone, keeping a familiar face for him in a different state, which costs far less than anything else I asked for, as they'll both be in Maryland. And that's another strange connection, too, because Aaron's father is from Maryland. My mother is also in Maryland. Number 5, since sister doesn't like my children's father, she refuses to keep in contact with my daughter, even though she's her most favorite person in the world and will need her support while I'm gone. Okay, so the last 3 cons of the kids going with their fathers are sarcasm, and the cons only affect the kids negatively by the same people claiming to be my support system. Though offering to move someone in is kind, when she asked what she could do for me to recover, only my ways offered pros for everyone. I'm sorry?
Where's my fan?
It's in your closet.
Why did you put it in the closet?
For inspection, just to move it out the way. Sorry. Though offering to move someone in is kind, when she asked what she could do for me to recover, only my ways offered pros for everyone. There was not a single pro for me or my kids to go my sister's way. And that is my fault and certainly regrettable. It's in black and white. There is not one pro to myself living with my sister. I know where my dealer lives. I know where my dealer lives. Okay? Truly, what is the difference? You know, you can't even consider that that's a con, because you can't consider that a pro, that he doesn't know where I live, because I know where he lives. All right, so if I want to do drugs, I'll do drugs. You can't even count him not knowing where I live as a pro. Just means if I relapse, I'll be driving farther to him. My current income is $1,333. That is 33% of my sister's income. I will still have $400 gone for the car, $400 gone for insurance and storage, $160 a month for gas, $144 in daycare. That's $1,316 already. Still need food, still need things, and all that is, the kids still need things, and all that is gone on the 3rd of the month. Okay? If I want to focus on my mental health, I can only work part-time, and that adds up to $675